Okay, so you know how we always think about separation anxiety like it's a kid thing?
Yeah.
Like the whole toddler clinging to their parent's leg?
Oh, yeah, classic.
Totally. Well, get ready to have your mind blown because today we are diving deep into separation anxiety.
Ooh, exciting.
But not just the kid kind, we're talking about adults too.
It's so interesting, right? Because we assume we just grow out of it.
Right. You just kind of think as adults we should be able to handle being away from people.
Exactly. But the reality is a lot more complicated than that.
I am so ready to unpack all of this.
Yeah.
So tell me, what exactly are we diving into today?
So we are going deep into this YouTube video called Conquering Separation Anxiety for Good.
Okay.
It's from Inner Balance Blueprint, and it is packed with insights
Awesome.
about how separation anxiety actually shows up in adults,
Okay.
why it happens, and like what we can actually do about it.
Okay, I am so curious. I'm so ready. Let's start with the basics, though. For someone who's like, wait, adults can have separation anxiety,
Yeah.
how would you even explain what that is?
Okay, so it's more than just not liking to be alone.
Mm, okay.
Like, think about it this way. You find out you have to be separated from someone important to you.
Yeah.
And like just the thought of that
Right.
just sends you into this like wave of intense distress.
Oh, wow.
That's separation anxiety.
So it's not even just being physically apart. It's like the anticipation.
Exactly.
Really can set it off.
Yes. And it goes beyond just like missing someone.
Okay.
We're talking like a serious emotional reaction that can impact your mental health, your relationships, like your everyday life.
Wow.
And the video uses this really powerful phrase. They say it can be disrupting routines and relationships.
Wow. Yeah, that really paints a picture of just how intense it can be.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny though, because I think a lot of us have this idea that as adults, we should just like suck it up and deal with it.
Oh, totally. That's such a common misconception.
Yeah.
And it can be so harmful
Right.
because it prevents people from getting help when they really need it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, okay, we've established it's a real thing. It's not just being a little clingy. But why does it happen in the first place? Is it all rooted in childhood?
Okay, so childhood definitely plays a role.
Okay.
And this is where we get into attachment theory.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of this, but like,
Yeah.
break it down for me.
Okay, so basically attachment theory suggests that the bonds we form early in life,
Yeah.
especially with our caregivers, have a huge impact on how we deal with separation as adults.
Interesting. Okay, so let's say a child grows up always feeling safe and loved and cared for.
Exactly.
What happens then?
They develop what we call a secure attachment style.
Okay.
And they learn that even when they're physically separated from their caregiver,
Yeah.
that bond is still there and it's strong.
Okay.
So later in life, they have this sense of inner security and independence.
So they kind of carry that feeling of security into their adult relationships.
Exactly. But for people who didn't have that consistent care,
Yeah.
or maybe their needs weren't met,
Okay.
things can be different. They might develop what we call insecure attachment styles,
Like what?
like anxious attachment or avoidant attachment.
Okay.
And these styles can make separation anxiety way worse
Right.
because there's this underlying fear that the connection could be lost forever.
That makes total sense. It's like those early experiences set the stage
Yeah,
for how we approach all kinds of relationships.
exactly. It's like a blueprint.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that childhood isn't the whole story.
Right, of course.
Our genes and like the stresses we go through in life,
All right.
those play a role too. It's complex.
So there's not one single answer that explains it for everybody,
Exactly. It's different for everyone.
which makes sense. So speaking of coping with this, the video doesn't just talk about the problem, right?
No, it doesn't.
It gives some solutions?
Yeah, it offers some really practical strategies.
Okay, like what?
So one that really stands out is this idea of gradual desensitization.
Gradual desensitization. Okay, I've never heard of this.
Yeah, so think of it like climbing a mountain.
Okay.
You wouldn't just try to climb the whole thing at once, right?
No.
You'd start with smaller climbs to build up your strength and endurance.
Right.
It's the same with separation anxiety.
So how does that work?
Instead of jumping into a situation that triggers all that anxiety,
Yeah.
you start with smaller steps.
Okay.
So let's say you panic at the thought of your partner going on like a week-long trip.
Right.
Instead of starting there,
Yeah.
maybe they just go out for a few hours
Oh, okay.
while you stay home
Yeah.
and practice some relaxation techniques.
So it's like baby steps.
Exactly. And over time, as you manage those smaller separations,
Yeah.
your anxiety starts to decrease
Okay.
and you build up the confidence to face those bigger challenges.
So you're basically retraining your brain.
Exactly. To react differently to those separation triggers.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like slowly dipping your toes into the anxiety pool
Yeah.
instead of just like jumping in the deep end.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that a lot. So what else?
Another key strategy is routine.
Routine. Okay, I'm intrigued. How does that help?
Okay, so our brains love predictability.
Okay.
So having those set routines
Right.
creates a sense of order and control,
Okay.
which can be really calming,
Right.
especially when you're dealing with the uncertainty of separation.
If you know that every morning starts with coffee and a walk,
Yeah,
and every evening ends with like a good book,
yeah,
it creates the sense of stability.
exactly. It's like an anchor that helps
Oh.
you feel grounded.
And this is especially important for people who are like caregivers.
Yes. The video actually talks about this a lot.
Okay.
They emphasize that self-care is so essential for caregivers.
Because you can't pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. If you're exhausted and burnt out,
Right.
you can't take care of anyone else.
Makes sense.
So things like exercise, social connection,
Yeah.
even just a few minutes of quiet time every day,
Yeah.
those can make a huge difference.
It sounds like we've only just scratched the surface here.
Oh, yeah,
There's so much more to this than I even realized.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And we're just getting started.
Okay, well, now I am really hooked.
Good.
But before we go any further, let me ask you this. Have you ever thought about how you would react if someone you knew,
Yeah.
like a friend or family member, confided in you about struggling with separation anxiety?
That's a really good question.
Would you know how to support them?
That's something we're going to explore a lot more as we go deeper into this topic.
I can't wait. You know, it's so easy to just brush off those feelings like, oh, you'll be fine.
It is.
Especially with adults,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, totally. And that's something this video really drives home.
Okay.
They share actual stories from people who are dealing with separation anxiety.
Oh, wow.
And just hearing them talk about their struggles, with their relationships with
Yeah.
work, even just everyday life,
Yeah.
it's really eye-opening.
It's one thing to like understand the definition,
Yeah,
but it's totally different to hear those personal stories.
Absolutely. And the video doesn't sugarcoat it either.
Oh, that's good.
They show the messy parts, like how it affects the person with anxiety and the people around them.
Yeah, it's not always easy.
It's not. And it makes you think, like, how would I react if someone told me they were struggling with this?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, I don't even know if I'd handle it the right way.
It's something to think about for sure. And it really highlights this point that the video makes
What's that?
about the importance of creating a supportive environment.
Okay, so it's not just about like individual coping mechanisms.
No, it's about creating a space where people feel safe and supported.
So what does that look like? How do we actually do that?
Well, communication is key.
Okay.
Like really listening, trying to understand, not just waiting for your turn to talk.
Yeah, just being present.
Exactly. And validating their feelings.
Okay.
Even if you don't personally get it.
Right.
It's about letting them know that their feelings are real.
That's so important, I think.
Yeah.
And wouldn't it also help to like involve them in decisions?
Yes. Especially when those decisions could trigger their anxiety.
Right, to give them some control.
Exactly. And this goes way beyond just personal relationships.
Okay. How so?
Imagine workplaces and schools that really get this.
Yeah.
Like teachers who are trained to recognize separation anxiety in kids.
Yeah.
Or companies that offer flexible work arrangements.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So people can manage their anxiety and still be successful.
Right, because it's not like people with separation anxiety can't work or can't function.
Exactly. They just need a little extra support.
Totally. So the video also talks about the good stuff, right?
It's on.
Like the benefits of actually managing separation anxiety.
Yes. It shows what life can be like when you're not constantly battling those fears.
So what does that look like?
Stronger relationships, more self-confidence, better social skills.
It makes sense. I mean, if you're always worried about being away from someone,
Yeah,
it's got to be hard to just like live your life.
totally. It affects everything.
Yeah.
And imagine being able to travel for work
Yeah.
without having a panic attack.
That would be amazing.
Or watching your kid walk into school on their first day
Yeah.
and knowing they're going to be okay.
Those are great examples. But let's be real, not everyone is going to get help.
Right.
And the video talks about what can happen if you just ignore it.
Yeah, and it's not pretty.
Like, what are we talking about here?
Things can get a lot worse. Like separation anxiety can develop into like chronic anxiety disorders, even depression. It's like a snowball rolling downhill.
Right.
The longer you wait, the harder it is to stop.
That is a scary thought.
It is.
Right.
And that's why it's so important to get help early on.
Okay, so if you're struggling, what should you do?
Reach out to a therapist.
Okay.
There are therapists who specialize in anxiety disorders.
Right.
They can give you the tools and support you need.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Exactly. There's no shame in it.
Okay, so before we get into all that, the video also mentions some things we can do to prevent it in the first place.
Yes.
Like how...
Education is huge.
Okay.
Like teaching parents teachers, employers
Right.
about separation anxiety
Yeah.
so they can create supportive environments.
So it's about building a culture of understanding from the beginning.
Exactly. And that all comes back to empathy.
Right. Just being able to see things from other people's perspectives.
Absolutely. And on a bigger scale,
Yeah.
policies that support mental health,
Okay.
like flexible work schedules, access to counseling in schools,
Those are all great ideas.
those things can make a huge difference.
Wow. This deep dive has been so insightful.
It has.
I'm seeing separation anxiety in a whole new light.
I'm glad.
We talked about attachment theory, coping strategies, and even what can happen if you don't get help.
Yeah, we covered a lot.
And what I find really inspiring is the video's message of hope.
Yes.
Like, they really emphasize that it's possible to get better.
Yeah.
They encourage people to share their experiences and support each other.
And to remember that you're not alone in this.
Exactly. That's so important. But there's one more thing I wanted to touch on.
Okay.
The video talks about the importance of facing your fears,
Yeah.
which seems kind of counterintuitive, right?
That-
Like, wouldn't you just want to avoid the things that make you anxious?
You would think so. But avoidance actually makes anxiety worse in the long run.
Oh, okay.
By facing your fears little by little,
Right.
you prove to yourself that you can handle them.
It's like that saying, what you resist persists.
Exactly.
The more you try to push it away, the stronger it gets.
Yeah, and when you face it head on,
Yeah.
just a little bit at a time,
Right.
you start to take away its power.
I love that. And that's where getting help comes in, right?
Yes.
Having a therapist, having a support system, talking to people who understand.
Those things can make all the difference.
Absolutely. So managing separation anxiety isn't about becoming fearless.
No.
It's about learning how to deal with those feelings so
Yeah.
you can actually live your life.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to talk about next.
Okay, so what else does this video say about actually managing this? Okay, so spill the beans.
All
What
right.
are some of these strategies?
All right, so one of the most effective tools is something called cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah, exactly. I've heard of that. But, like, how does it actually work?
Okay, so CBT is all about like recognizing and challenging those thoughts and behaviors
Okay.
that are feeding your anxiety.
Okay.
It's like rewiring your brain to react differently to those triggers.
Okay.
So the video gives this example. Imagine you're constantly worried that something bad has happened.
Yeah.
If your loved one is even a few minutes late.
Oh my gosh, yes. My mind goes to the worst case scenario immediately.
Right. So with CBT,
Yeah.
you learn to like pause when you have those thoughts
Okay.
and ask yourself, is there any evidence for this thought?
Right.
Is there another way to look at this situation?
Oh, that's interesting.
So instead of just like spiraling,
Yeah.
you're actually interrupting those negative thought patterns
Okay.
and replacing them with more balanced ones.
So you're basically training your brain to be more realistic.
Exactly. And the best part is CBT is super accessible these days.
Oh, really?
The video even talks about how technology has made it easier than ever. Like, there are apps and online resources
Wow.
that put those tools right in your hand.
It's like having a therapist in your pocket.
It kind of is.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got gradual desensitization routine, CBT. What else is in this toolbox?
Another really important thing is having a safety plan.
A safety plan for when anxiety hits.
Exactly. It's like a fire drill for your anxiety.
Okay, I've never thought of it that way, but I like it.
It's about having a plan in place.
Okay.
So when you feel that panic coming on, you know exactly what to do.
Okay, so walk me through this.
First, you want to identify a safe space,
Okay.
somewhere in your home or your environment
Okay.
where you can go to feel grounded.
Like a comfy chair or something.
It could be a quiet room, a specific spot in nature, anything that makes you feel calm.
Okay, I can see that.
Then you want to make a list of people you can reach out to for support.
Okay.
These could be friends, family members, a therapist,
Right.
even a crisis hotline.
Oh, okay.
Just have those contacts handy.
So you don't have to think about it in the moment.
Right. And finally, your safety plan should include some calming techniques.
Okay. Like what?
Things you've practiced beforehand,
Okay.
like deep breathing exercises or visualization.
So you're prepared.
Exactly. It's about taking control and reminding yourself that even when you're anxious,
Yeah.
you have tools to help you through it.
This is all so helpful. I never realized how much goes into managing separation anxiety.
Definitely more than just telling yourself to calm down.
For sure.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up, what are some key takeaways you want our listeners to remember?
I think the biggest thing is that understanding separation anxiety is the first step to overcoming it.
Right. Knowledge is power.
Exactly. And I really want people to feel hopeful.
Yeah,
Recovery is possible.
absolutely.
And there's no shame in asking for help.
This has been such an amazing deep dive. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. It's a fascinating talk.
It really is. And I think the video's ending message is so powerful.
What's that?
They say, the key moment in overcoming separation anxiety is facing your fears head on.
That's so true.
It's like a call to action.
Yeah.
It reminds us that we have to step outside our comfort zones to grow.
And that sometimes the best way to deal with fear is to face it.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure.
And
And remember, if you're struggling with separation anxiety,
yeah.
reach out. There's help available.
And you don't have to go through it alone.
You are not alone.
And to all our listeners, keep diving deep, keep learning, and we'll catch you next time.